Let's do some more reactions to some of these weird freaking weight loss stuff. Let's let's dive into the first one.
Can you lose fat while gaining muscle at the same time? This is one of the age-old fitness questions that people continue to be curious about, and for good reason. These are both excellent goals for one's overall health and fitness, but there can be a little bit of confusion with this. Many say that you can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time.
So it is possible to gain fat and lose muscle at the same time. It just, a lot of times it is very difficult. And the best way to do it is do one and the other, like as you know, with bodybuilding and a lot of health related fields like that, bulking and cutting phases are the most common because they're the most effective. Gaining fat or losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time becomes difficult because if you're in a calorie deficit, it's really hard to gain muscle. But if you're in a calorie surplus, it's really hard to lose fat. So it becomes very difficult, but let's see what he says.
While others say that you can't and need to alternate between phases of bulking or muscle building with phases of cutting or fat loss. So, which is correct? Well, it is possible to lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, but it depends on multiple factors. It doesn't work well for every single person. So today, we're going to discuss what type of person this can work well for, talk about the best strategies on how to do it, from calories to strength training, and even get into if cardio is a good idea for trying to lose fat and gain muscle.
So, I mean, from what I could tell, he's heading in the right direction. There are specific types of people and specific circumstances where you can lose fat and gain muscle at the same time, but they're pretty particular. And I would even say, even considering those certain circumstances, I would say I would always almost prefer to do one phase or the other at a singular time, regardless of your situation. But let's dive back.
At the same time. So let's get into this anatomical and physiological awesomeness. Losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time is known as body recomposition. You are changing the composition of your body tissues, and in this case, decreasing the amount of fat while increasing the amount of muscle. Now, some may define true body recomposition as
those are some nice gloves. They're nice and pink. They caught my eye. I thought that was like his editing or something.
Changing the proportions of these body tissues while maintaining the same total tissue mass. So in other words, if you had a 180-pound person, that person would stay at 180 pounds, but eventually less of that weight would be coming from fat and more of that weight would be coming from muscle. But again, you'd stay at 180 pounds. However, there are situations where people may not want a complete pound-for-pound swap of fat for muscle, and I'll give an example of that a little bit later on. But what are some of the challenges with losing fat and gaining muscle at the same time? Well, first, losing this stuff, adipose tissue or fat, requires a calorie deficit.
Correct. So you need to be in a calorie deficit to lose fat. You cannot be in a surplus, essentially, because that essentially how it works to lose fat is your body needs to take energy from somewhere, and if it's not taking it from food, then obviously it's going to take it from within your body. And so that's the whole purpose of losing fat, is you're not taking the energy from the food, you're taking the muscle or taking the energy from the fat, which is literally the purpose of fat. Your body stores fat 4 times of hunger to gain that energy on. It's basically just a storage.
You need to burn more calories than you consume so that your body starts to tap into the stored energy that is in the fat. And as a reference, a pound of fat contains about 3,500 calories. So if you wanted to lose a pound of fat each week, you'd want to average a calorie deficit of about 500 calories per day. However, building this tissue, skeletal muscle tissue, typically requires a calorie surplus, giving your body extra calories and energy to repair and grow muscle tissue after workouts. And so obviously, these seem to be contradictory goals, because you can't be in a calorie deficit and a calorie surplus at the same time. Another reason why body recomposition is a difficult goal is because you can usually burn fat at a faster rate than you can build muscle. Just go back to that example again of losing fat. If you were in a calorie deficit of 3,500 calories per week for 8 weeks, you could potentially lose 8 pounds. But imagine trying to add 8 pounds of muscle in that same 8-week period. That's difficult to do even in a calorie surplus when.
I mean, he's making a lot of good points here. Is as you see, it's really contradictory because, I mean, you just looking at the science behind it is how can you almost build muscle while losing fat? Like your body needs to get the energy from somewhere, and if obviously you're trying to grow, you should have a surplus of energy, but how can you do that when you're in a negative surplus of energy? So you could kind of see where it will head is you need to be in a maintenance to do this basically, but burning the fat will make you lose it, but then building the muscle, so you basically have to be at that maintenance level, which I'm sure it sounds like he's going to dive into.
Someone is not trying to lose weight. However, there are situations where body recomposition does work, and so let's cover some of those situations. There are pretty much 3 categories of people that body recomposition works pretty well for. The first category is
therapy has always been such a scary idea to me because
love
I
ads.
simply did not know where to get started. I didn't know how to
beginners to resistance training. And if that beginner is also a young person, like in their teens and early 20s, that further gives an advantage because of those raging pubescent hormones. But with any beginner, their bodies are so primed for muscle development because when the body is first exposed to such a powerful new stimulus like resistance training, it creates an extremely strong drive for protein synthesis.
Yes, I would say beginners is people who are able to body recomp, but I would say it's kind of difficult. I would say not only beginners, but more specifically younger beginners, because they're essentially in that growing stage and their body's going to seek out ways, and the metabolism's high and the testosterone's high, and so that's easier to lose fat and gain muscle at the same time with those specific individuals.
That it's almost as if the person is on natural steroids. And you've probably seen someone, or maybe noticed with yourself, that you gain strength and size very quickly in the beginning. Beginners can follow almost any resistance training protocols and get great gains in strength and size. And so because of this strong drive for protein synthesis that beginners benefit from, even in a calorie deficit, the body will continue to liberate the energy from the fat in order to continue to provide the energy and resources to promote muscle growth. Beginners could successfully burn fat and gain muscle for over a year in some cases, but eventually this is going to be harder and harder to do, which we'll address in just a second.
It's interesting. He said you could still build muscle in a calorie deficit, which is theoretically possible and has been done and can be done, but I would say it's extremely difficult. I would say aim for more of a maintenance calorie, because if you're in a calorie deficit, I literally think behind the science behind it is your body isn't getting enough energy for its daily functions. Thus, it needs to pull the energy from somewhere. So it's going to pull it from fat storage, and it will pull from muscles as well. Even if you're training, that's what training kind of prevents is it pulling too much muscle, but it's regardless is you're going to lose muscle while in a calorie deficit, and in a calorie surplus you're going to gain fat regardless of how much you're training. And so in a calorie deficit, building muscle at the same time as the losing the fat, it is extremely hard, and it can work, but that's why I say maintenance is a better area for that.
But the second category would be people that are returning to training. So if you took a long break from exercise, when you return, you kind of benefit from those beginner gains again, but this doesn't last as long as those true initial beginner's gains because you typically gain muscle back more quickly than when you first gained it.
This is the best, I would say, group of people who can do body recomposition because the body has an amazing muscle memory. If you've ever dieted before and lost a certain amount of weight and regain that weight really quickly, it's the same kind of concept. Is your body gets used to things that you give it. So if you've trained a lot in the past and got pretty big muscularly, especially recently in the past, then it's going to be so much more easier just to put that muscle back on, and your body will say, yeah, I know what to do here if you're giving it the same stimulus in terms of food and training. So this is the best group for body recomposition.
You could consider this a form of muscle memory, and we actually have a whole video explaining how you gain muscle back faster in our muscle memory video that I'll link at the end of this video. The third category would be individuals with higher percentages of body fat. If you have a higher percentage of body fat, you'll obviously have more stored fat, and in a way, your body isn't going to respond to a calorie deficit the same way as if you had like 15% body fat.
This is another high group. I would say the second and third are the best groups for body recomposition, because if you look at going back to how weight loss happens is you're in that deficit, and so that body needs to pull energy from somewhere. So if you have a huge surplus of body fat, basically you have this huge storage of energy, thus making your body like, yeah, I could use all of this, thus making it possible to grow and build muscle. But I think it's often, I've worked with people and tried to do body recomposition and heavier set people. It becomes fairly hard because you have to be at least a maintenance, if not lower, because you have that excess body fat. And your body needs to adjust to pulling that energy from the fat.
With the extra fat, your body can more easily tap into those fuel reserves while still building muscle. And again, if this person is highly overweight or obese, most of the time, the person usually isn't looking to do a pound for pound swap of fat for muscle. Usually the goal is to lose much more fat than the amount of muscle that they want to gain, which also...
This is why it becomes more important, I would say, to not really focus on body recomposition and more on weight loss, especially in this group of people. You will gain muscle almost inevitably a little bit if you're training and doing the weight loss phase properly with the calorie deficit and the training stimulus. But to think of it as, I don't need to go into a calorie deficit because I'm just going to turn my fat into muscle, is, I think, a really bad mindset that's going to tend to lead to failure.
What makes this body recomposition more doable in this particular situation. But with all of these situations, they will only take you so far, because as someone has less fat to lose and gets more and more advanced, or in other words, those that have been building muscle for an extended period of time, these people know that it takes much more effort to continue to gain muscle even in a caloric surplus, let alone in a caloric deficit. And so this is where it starts to make much more sense to focus on one goal at a time, or shifting to this idea of going on a bulking phase where the focus can be purely on building muscle, alternated with a cutting phase where the focus could be purely on losing fat. And
so, I mean, he's hitting it really good here. Is body recomposition is possible, but often it's used as an excuse not to do the hard work, and it often leads to failure with the goal of body recomposition. I would say your body recomposition phases should almost be in between your bulking and cutting phases, where you have a little bit of maintenance and you let your body adjust to whatever phase you're in right there, and try to focus on recomposition in that area. But a specific body recomp, like I'm going to body recomp for 5 months, I think more times than not, you're being lazy and you're not willing to put in the effort to actually lose fat or build muscle properly.
And maintaining the muscle that was gained during the bulking phase, because it is a much easier task to maintain muscle during a caloric deficit than it is to build muscle. But if you find yourself in one of these three categories where losing fat and gaining muscle is feasible, there are a few things that need to be done while attempting this. First, you must do resistance training. Now, I know that seems like one of the more obvious ones, but I've got to be thorough here because you could lose fat from a caloric deficit without working out.
Just like I was saying, is by resistance training in a caloric deficit, it helps you maintain that muscle. And especially, let's say you're in the third group of people he was talking about, the overweight people, you have to be training sufficiently, and then you are almost guaranteed to build muscle, especially if you haven't been training a lot before then. It's extremely important to be training. I see so many people that spend so much time on the treadmill and on the cardio machines, but training is so important because it builds muscle, it maintains muscle, and it's just another stimulus in which your body can pull that fat from.
But that would do nothing for your muscles, and you would actually likely lose some muscle with the fat if you didn't combine the caloric deficit with resistance training, because there is no way to get significant muscle growth without a strong stimulus. And again, that strong stimulus is lifting weights. Compound movements are going to be your biggest bang for buck here, such as squats, deadlifts, bench press, shoulder press, pull-ups, etc.
Really good point here is compound movements basically mean movements that require multiple muscle groups. So if you look at like a bicep curl, that's basically just speaking for the bicep. But if you do maybe like an underhand lat pull down, I mean, you're engaging your back and your biceps and your grip, your forearms are going to be in there. And so it's engaging a lot more muscles groups. And so if you do like movements like squat and deadlift and movements like that require a lot of different muscle groups, it's going to take up a lot more energy because you're using a lot of different more muscles, and requiring more energy means more energy burn, which means more fat loss. So compound movements are definitely the best bang for your buck in terms of exercises to do for weight loss.
You can throw in some isolation exercises as well, but again, the foundation should start with those compound movements. You also want to apply the principle of progressive overload, which is trying to add a little more weight to the bar every week or so. Progressive overload could also come in the form of increasing the reps and/or overall volume. And there are multiple ways to fit this into a given week.
Progressive overload is an extremely important topic because your body is just this crazy adaptive machine. And so if you go into it and let's say your exercise, let's go back to the bicep curl, is you just curl this 20-pound dumbbell and you do that every week. Same reps, same weight every week. Your body will adjust to that. And so it will take less and less energy. Growth will be stunted. So you have to give it what's called an adaptive stimulus, which means you have to progress that either in reps, in weight, in form, in some way or another. You have to make that intense. Keep that intensity there. So if that intensity starts to lower, raise it back up somehow.
You could potentially pull it off with 2 days of resistance training a week, but those would likely need to be longer sessions. 3 days a week is a place that I often start with many of my patients, but we have some more detailed videos on how to build muscular size and how to implement this into your routine that I'll link at the end of this video.
Solving problems with your tools instead of technical problems?
Oh.
Let me guess. You spend hours a week.
Next, we need to start messing with the calories and even the macronutrients, specifically the protein. Like we mentioned earlier, a deficit of about 500 calories a day will cause you to lose about a pound per week. But I usually recommend a 300 to 500 calorie deficit when you're first starting out. And of course, you need to make sure you're getting enough protein.
That is a good caloric deficit for a weight loss phase. But in terms of main gaining or body recomposition, you want, I would say, to be more towards that maintenance area. But regardless, I would say, unless you're an advanced lifter, just focus mainly on fat loss, and some muscle will come with that. So I would say mainly focus on fat loss, mainly focus on that 500 calorie deficit. But on the same side of it, counting your calories becomes very difficult. So I would say, instead of counting calories, keep your diet a majority of just whole foods, just, fruits, without minimal processing. The minimally processed you could get your diet, the more satiated you're going to be, and the easier it's going to be to lose weight. So I would say eat a wide variety of whole foods. I guarantee you, if you eat nothing but whole foods, you could eat as much as you want and you'll still lose weight. I promise you.
Now, protein recommendations are anywhere from 1.2 to 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day.
And this is another number that can get pretty confusing. I mean, this is a great video for people who maybe are more advanced in lifting, but protein also can be a little more complicated to count. That's why I would say in your 3 or 4 meals a day, have a protein source in there. A lean protein source like beef or chicken, salmon, whatever it is. Just have protein in your diet, and I guarantee you'll reach your protein amount.
And the higher end of 2.2 is usually recommended for athletes and bodybuilders that are serious about putting on muscle. Now, many of you may not consider yourself a major athlete or a bodybuilder. However, since we are in a calorie deficit, some of the ingested protein will likely get pulled and utilized for energy instead of muscle building. So because of this, you would still want to hedge towards the higher end of 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight, which for us non-metric people, just a gram of protein per pound of body weight should do the trick.
So great advice. Definitely aim for the higher amount of protein if you can, but also you got to realize your energy comes from your carbohydrates. So don't cut your carbohydrates. It's not always the more protein, the better, but the more you could get in, essentially, the better the muscle growth phases can be. But in terms of weight loss, it's not as important. So I think that video is pretty decent. I don't really disagree with a lot. It's good for more basic lifters. It's more advanced lifters. I would say more if you're into more of the basic lifting and dieting, just focus on cutting and bulking. Focus on those phases. And I would say the first thing that people should do, unless you're really scrawny, is cut. But if you're really scrawny, focus on bulking. Start with that. And I would say that's the best way to tackle your diet and tackle your goals. So let's move on to the next video here.
Hi, in this video, I'll be explaining exactly how you can burn fat and lose weight without working out or exercising. My name is Dr. Tulu. I'm a medical doctor, medical content creator, and my videos on weight loss have been watched by hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, helping a lot of people along the way. So fam, let's get straight to it. I know it sounds too good to be true that you can burn fat and lose weight without exercising or hitting the gym. But here's the truth, okay? Weight loss is not mainly about how much you sweat at the gym or how many reps or sets you can do. It's much more about calories in versus calories out. So
yes, he is pretty right there, but I would say weight loss, it's two things that consider your weight loss. It's your energy in versus your energy out. So your movement, your energy out versus what you're eating. So if your eating is more than you're moving, then obviously you're going to gain weight. If it's less than you're moving, then you're going to lose weight. So in terms of this line, he's basically saying all you can do is move this line, which is true. But can you also move this line? Yes. So you could do one or the other, but can you do both? And yes, and what's most effective? I would say both.
So weight loss actually has more to do with the kitchen than the gym. Weight loss is much more about your calorie intake. So let's break it down to the basics. First, what are calories? Simply put, a calorie is just a unit of energy. It measures how much energy you get from the foods and the drinks you consume. So think of your body like a car. Cars need fuel to move and function, right? Well, if you are a car, and I'm sure you are a lovely sports car, sleek, beautiful, sorry, I play too much. If you're a car, then food is your fuel, and calories measure how much energy that fuel gives you. So a plate of jollof rice, calories. A bottle of soda, calories. That's just a little slice of cake you had in the middle of the night, calories. Your body uses these calories to power everything you do, from breathing to thinking to walking and even sitting to scroll on your phone. You need calories for all these things.
Very good description of calories. I mean, everything you do is based off of calories. But I mean, in the direction he's going into, in terms of diet being a lot more important than exercise for weight loss, I disagree with that premise, because exercise is just so vital in terms of helping you get that. I mean, cardio is just miraculous for helping with weight loss, and especially in terms of physique, is normally people are losing weight for appearance purposes. So if you're not exercising alongside of that to help with that, I feel like you're just missing out. Your muscles aren't going to be strong. They're not going to be toned up. You're just burning fat, and burning fat will be burning muscle. And so unless you just want to look skinny, if that's the look you're going for, I mean, but I would definitely say exercise and diet are the two areas you should tackle your stuff. So
Yes, you even burn calories when you are doing absolutely nothing. Okay, so now that we understand what calories are, let's get to the very interesting parts. But before we get to it, I just want to say, if you're a woman and you want to have a deeper understanding of calories, you want to know exactly what you should be doing to burn fat and lose weight at a deeper level than this video might provide, then I have something just for you. I've written a book called The Weight Loss Bible for Busy Women.
So I did a reaction last week on, or a few days ago, and I don't know why a lot of men tend to seek to give advice to women. I feel like women often tend to understand women better, and it's women tend to seek advice from women better. So it's interesting he is talking to women, and he wrote a book for women when men should probably look to men and women to women. But I mean, to each their own. But I think out of everyone watching this video, it's going to be mostly men.
This book is written specially, like the name suggests,
might be
for
wrong.
women who are busy with different areas of their lives: motherhood, career, family. It discusses how you can burn fat, lose weight, have that trim body structure you want without having to sacrifice any other important area of your life. If this book sounds like something you would love to buy and read, I put a link in the description of this video. Just click on it and it will take you to where you can buy it. Let's talk about the only real and sustainable way that you can burn fat and lose weight. The famous, the one, the only calorie deficit. So what's a calorie deficit? A calorie deficit happens when you consume fewer calories than your body needs to maintain your current body weight. So look at it this way. Imagine that your body needs, say, about 2,000 calories a day to maintain your current weight. This means that if you keep eating 2,000 calories a day, you will remain as you are. If you up it to 2,500 calories a day, you would gain weight because you are taking more, so your body stores more as fat. But if instead of taking 2,000 calories, which your body is kind of used to maintain your current weight, if you step it down to say 1,500 calories, your body will realize after a while that you are taking in less calories than you usually do.
Your body will realize after a while. I think your body will instantly pretty much realize that you're in a calorie deficit. It'll start dropping weight almost instantaneously. There is a little minor adjustment period where, especially if you are maybe in a surplus, where the next day you go into deficit and the next day you go into deficit, you maybe won't feel as much in a deficit because your body is still kind of reaping the rewards of that surplus beforehand. But instantly your body will start responding to that calorie deficit. So I don't know why he said you have to wait a little.
And eventually what will happen is that your body, to give you the fuel that you need, would have to burn stored up fats to make up for the 500 calories that it used to get from you but is no longer getting. When this happens, your body burns this stored up fats to compensate, and you end up burning fats and ultimately losing weight. So think of it like your bank account. If you deposit the same amount that you spend, your balance remains the same level, no changes. However, if you spend more than you deposit, you lose money. That's a calorie deficit. And for those who want to
Did he say lose money?
than you deposit, you lose money. That's a calorie deficit. And for those who want
Lose
to
money?
gain weight, if you save more than you spend, your account balance grows. But this video is
He's talking
weight
about
loss,
money.
we are
I'm
focusing on the
zoning
calorie
out. My bad.
deficit. With weight loss, your savings are the fat. So the less you deposit, maybe by eating in smaller portions or by eating foods that are relatively lower in calories, the more your body burns its stored energy, aka fat. So you see that when you break it down to the basics, it's actually simple. Okay, good. So now let's talk about 5 practical no BS strategies to get started in a calorie deficit. Number 1, you need to know how many calories you should be taking to be in a calorie deficit.
It is an important step to take to learn what your calorie count is every day. You could do this easily by going on a website and figuring that out. But, I mean, I would say your best bet is to, instead of trying to count everything and then count all your foods, is one, eat majority whole foods, less processed foods, and two, just remain slightly hungry. I mean, obviously, if you're full, you're probably at a maintenance or above, so you got to remain slightly hungry at all times and just keep those foods mostly whole foods.
So you need to calculate it. But I'll make this really easy for you. So one of the easiest ways to do this is to use a calorie calculator. And there are many calorie calculators online. So in a calorie calculator, you put in your current weight, your dream weight, and then your level of physical activity. And then it will do the job of calculating how many calories you should be taking daily in order to hit your dream weight. So personally, I have a calorie calculator that I prefer and that I like to use. If you would like access to this calorie calculator, I put the link in description. You can get access to the calorie calculator there for free. Now,
I mean, calorie counting is useful, and if it works for you, do it. And if you're okay with counting all that stuff, it just becomes really complicated at times. But advances in technology, it's pretty good. I would say calorie counting becomes mostly important with foods, processed foods. I mean, let's say so there's some times where I might want to cheat when I'm in a calorie deficit and I don't know if I can afford the calories, so I will get on ChatGPT or Google and say, how much does this donut have? And then it'll show me. I was like, yeah, I can't afford that. That's going to put me over 300 calories. Like maybe 100 calories, I could substitute it or something that way. But in terms of if you eat mostly clean, I would say counting isn't necessary. It is a useful tool and it works. And I would say majority of people would want to cut still eating the crappy foods that they do. But if you don't want to suffer in terms of both physically just dying and counting everything all the time, then I would say just follow my two tips I said a little earlier.
Now, they're not paying me to put this in the video. I just really like the calorie calculator and I think it's one of the best out there. The second thing you need to do is to control your portions. Now, a simple how to do this is to use smaller plates to eat, or you can just implement it yourself. It's usually best to start slowly. So say for your rice, if you used to eat maybe 3 cups of rice, you can start by maybe reducing it from 3 cups to 2.5 cups, or maybe even 2 cups. And then to make up for that reduction in food, you can add vegetables. That's something that I personally love to do. And this
very good advice, but as I said before, this mostly works for those tasty foods because you tend to eat more of those tasty foods. They're designed for you to consume more of them. And so this works really well for that. I mean, if you're sitting in front of a bunch of chicken strips, you're just going to load your plate up. And so this advice works. Make a smaller plate so you can't load up as much. But again, I still revert to my original advice.
is because vegetables are much lower in calories than, say, rice. But then they can also help to keep you feeling fuller for longer. And that really brings me to the third strategy, which is actually taking more veggies and prioritizing other high fiber options like your oatmeal, your whole grains. They work just like veggies. They are relatively lower in calories and they can keep you feeling fuller for longer. And the icing on the cake, oh no, sorry, there's no cake in this video. And the best part about it is that they are very good for your health as well.
What's interesting is he doesn't say anything about fruits. I'm wondering if he's one of those that believes that fruits are bad for you because they have sugar. But I would say, yeah, get vegetables in, but you could fill those with fruits too. Fruits have a lot of fiber and are often, I mean, they're low calorie, they're whole foods. I would say if it's a whole food, it's okay. Don't shy from these other foods. Vegetables are not the only option. I mean, you got vegetables, you got fruits, berries, you got a lot of different options there. So you don't have to eat these gross vegetables.
The fourth thing is to go for high protein options. So think about your eggs, your beans, your chicken, your fish, tofu. Those are good high protein options. Make them an important part of your daily meals. In fact, personally, I would say you should target about 20 to 30 grams of protein with every meal that you have.
Protein is a very important tool when it comes to losing weight because it is very satiating. it fills you more than any other food, and it takes more energy to burn that protein. And so, in a lot of different ways, high protein diets tend to be better for weight loss.
Helps to keep you feeling fuller for longer and can help you on your way to burning fat and losing weight. And the fifth strategy, which is very, very important, is cutting out your liquid calories. So think about your juice, soda, alcohol, even your healthy smoothies. Many of them are relatively high in calories.
I'm a big proponent of this. I mean, the only liquid I really drink is my water with electrolytes. But I would say this is less important now because I would say majority of drinks people are drinking tend to be low calorie. I mean, you look at energy drinks, what they used to be versus what they are now. I mean, you'll find tons of 0 and 5 calorie energy drinks now. And so I would say this is less of a problem now. Obviously, if you're drinking sodas, that's a big contributor. But if you're drinking diet sodas, I mean, I would say the world is tend to be drinking less of their calories now, which is a good thing.
So even if you are getting everything right with your foods, the things that you eat, if you don't work on your drinks, you might just end up secretly adding hundreds of calories and then ruining all your progress. I would recommend that you prioritize water, tea, or even your black coffee. And if you have the occasional sweet tooth, you want to take something sweet, then I would say it's better you go for your 0 calorie or low calorie soda options or other drinks that
I would say if you're craving sweets, eat fruit. That's what I say.
0 calories, low in calories. While ultimately they may not be best for your health, but we are talking about the occasional sweet tooth. They are much better in terms of your calorie intake than your regular soda. Now, let me be clear. Exercise is great for your health. It helps with fitness, your heart health, your mood. It boosts your metabolism. It's awesome, but it is definitely not the most important factor when weight loss is concerned. You can go to the gym, sweat for an hour, burn 500 calories, but having just one bottle of soda can wipe out most of that effort in a matter of minutes.
I mean, he's right.
That's why your diet matters more. The truth is, you cannot out-exercise.
I would say it
your
doesn't matter
balanced
more.
diet, but you can lose weight just by eating smarter. All right, guys, so here's the bottom line.
Okay, I mean, he has a lot of good points, but as I said, I would recommend my 2 tips. Eat whole foods and remain slightly hungry, and tackle it from both angles, exercise and nutrition. I mean, someone who says they don't have time for exercises, I'm sorry, you have time. You have time. I would recommend habit stacking with exercise. I mean, go on a treadmill and read a book or watch a movie. Go on a stationary bike and put on your favorite show. Or in between sets in the gym, you could do something. You could work. You could do whatever you normally would be doing. Find something you already do and intermingle exercise with that. That's my advice for that. So let's move on. Let's do this one.
Concepts are simple, methods are many. I actually heard Andy Galpin say that on his podcast with Andrew Huberman. He said, concepts are few, methods are many. And if you think about it, it's that simple. There are a few concepts that work. There's a lot of ways to, as they say, skin the cat. You can approach strength training and working out and diet in so many ways. But when it comes down to it, resistance training in the right rep ranges, progressive overload with total intensity and volume, and enough nutrition to rebuild your muscle.
He is right. I mean, in terms of health is pretty simple but complex. And so there's simple ideas, but it's complex because there's multiple ways you could do things and multiple angles you could tackle things from. And so where am I going here is everyone has different bodies. Everyone has different tastes and different ways they like, different pain tolerances, and these all apply to how you can tackle your health. And so there's several different methods. I have questions about some of the things he said, but let's watch.
Losing weight, losing body fat The concepts are just as simple. But at the same time, there are also many methods. So in order to lose weight, in order to lose body fat, I'm sure many of you know this, but if not, here's a reminder. You have to be in a caloric deficit. So if you weigh 200 pounds, like me, for example, I weigh 200 pounds right now. If I maintain a pretty consistent diet from day to day, week to week, there are some variations. If I go out to dinner, I'm probably eating more. Certain days I'm eating less. Depending on what I'm training and how I'm training, my energy needs shift a little bit, but I don't get too obsessive about it. But in order for me to maintain 200 pounds, my diet has to maintain consistency in terms of my energy intake, how much I'm eating.
I mean, that's another interesting take is your diet doesn't have to be the same every single day. It just has to average whatever you want. So if you want that caloric deficit, your diet has to average below. So maybe one day it's here, well, maybe one day it's here, but then the other 2 days it's here. You'll average out maybe about here. And so I would say a diet going like this from day to day is going to be hard to sustain. I would say majority the easier it's going to be is the less of a deficit you're in. But regardless, I would say after some time you should have some days, or even after a month of being in a deficit, you have a week of at least maintenance, just to give your body time to kind of recover and recuperate from that. But I would say consistency is best.
If I'm eating too much, too frequently, I'm then in a surplus, I will gain weight. And if I'm eating too little, less than is required to maintain 200 pounds, I will lose weight. That is the concept. You have where you're at right now. If you want to lose weight, you need to eat less, consume less calories, or expend more through working out than is required to maintain your current weight. And if you want to gain weight, if you want to bulk, if you want to put on some size, some mass, which will bring some body fat too, you need to eat in a caloric surplus more than is required to maintain your current weight. That concept is pretty simple. And it is science.
It's simple, but difficult in a lot of the ways that it's hard for people to apply those principles. Because although it's just like, oh, I need to eat less, there's just so many misconceptions too. I mean, people are like, oh, I got to cut my carbs, which isn't necessarily true. And just like a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings on how the methods to which you do it, which you kind of stated.
We know that works. If you're telling yourself right now, that doesn't work for me, or someone you know tells you that doesn't work for everyone, that's a load of BS. That is the law of thermodynamics.
This is so true of a point, because there's a lot of people who are in denial and say, I can't lose weight. The medication I'm on won't let me lose it, even if I'm in a caloric deficit. Or my body, my illness, it won't let me lose weight, even if I'm in a caloric deficit. That's completely false, and that's an excuse. You will always lose weight. Your body has to pull the energy from somewhere. Where do you think it's pulling it out of if you're in a caloric deficit? Is like the air? I'm getting energy from the air. No, it's pulling it from somewhere in your body. So, I mean, obviously there's different factors contributing to how it actually pulls and where it's pulling from exactly and where your body stores the fat mostly. But if you're in a caloric deficit, you will lose weight. No exceptions.
We know that's how the body works. That's how we maintain, lose, or gain weight. But there's a lot of methods in terms of how you eat, what you eat, when you eat, in order to get there. And to be honest, there's no right answer There's no perfect answer. It is what works for you, what you enjoy, what is sustainable. Now, prioritizing strength training or cardio, where should you start? What should you do? To lose weight, I will add this. To lose weight, all the training you do, all the workouts, the running, the strength training, fat loss, weight loss is a byproduct of that exercise in that diet. So I would always prioritize personally strength training and allow cardiovascular conditioning, in this case running, support and complement your strength training.
So it's interesting because he says strength training and then cardio as in that's like your only two options when there's tons of different types of training. Strength training is basically when you have heavy loads for lower reps. So basically you're lifting a pretty heavy weight for a weight that you can only do for like 3 to 5 reps. That's like strength training. And so I disagree with this premise. I would say strength training is majority best for people wanting to get big, and it's hard to do that in a caloric deficit. It's really taxing on your body. And I would say compound movements and hypertrophy training, which is muscle growth training, would definitely suit fat loss phases better, in my opinion. So it's interesting. He speaks strength training as in that's resistance training is strength training, and it's not. Resistance training includes a lot of different types of training. You could do endurance training. You could lift lighter weights for higher reps, and so there's a lot of different methods you could go from. And if strength training is the one you like and you want to do, and you want to really get strong while lose fat, I mean, you could do it. It's hard. I wouldn't say it's optimal, but it's obviously an option. So,
because what I've seen is strength training has, and this next section, we're going to dive into specialization for training based off goals. But for the everyday person, if you're not training for something specific or very particular and specialized at the moment, strength training has greater impact and benefit on body composition, on metabolic activity, on hormone regulation, the way you look, the way you feel, and just overall optimization, not for the here and now, but also the future. Because as you get older, your health span and lifespan is very dependent, not only on VO2 max, but the amount of muscle mass that you have.
I mean, that is very true. And so I would say in terms of longevity, thinking about your lifespan, weight loss shouldn't be your only goal. There's basically 2 huge indicators of a long and healthy life with a good quality of life, and that's low body fat and high muscle mass. And so definitely, like I was saying, contradictory to the video previously, is focus on both exercise and diet. That's your best bet.
So I'm a fan of always prioritizing strength training because I think it has the most positive impacts, not just on your health, but also the way that you look, feel, and perform for now and in the future. That's not to say that you should not practice or include cardio, because if you know me, I love cardio. I love running in particular for the mental and physical benefits of it.
I mean, just as diet and exercise are both good, I would say here's a simple way you could probably look at it is diet, eat majority whole foods and be slightly hungry. So 2 things. And in exercise, I would say focus on 2 things: lift weights and do cardio. I would say if you want it super simplified and easy to think about 2 areas, and each of those 2 areas have 2 areas. And so cardio becomes extremely useful because you elevate that heart rate. I mean, it's good for your heart and lungs. That's basically the muscles you're training, but it tends to really help out with people in terms of fat loss because it there are studies that show that those who burn, let's say, 500 calories doing cardio, they're only hungry for half of those calories. And so essentially, you're almost tackling your hunger by doing that cardio. And me personally, I've experienced it so much. A lot of times we don't want to do that cardio. Like, you can do weight training and resistance training and still reap those benefits, but cardio just helps so much. So I would say it's important to do that cardio.
Cardiovascular conditioning also has great impact on the body in terms of improving VO2 max, heart health, lung health, helping circulate and move blood throughout the body, which also can help your strength training sessions. So they both are very important to incorporate, and we should all be incorporating some sort of level of strength training and cardiovascular conditioning into our weekly programming.
I think he means resistance training. Every time he says strength training, I think he means lifting weights. I think that's what he's referring to.
But if I had to prioritize one, it would be strength for all of those reasons, and I would allow cardio to complement. Now you're probably asking yourself, well, Nick, we see you run a lot, especially in certain seasons of your life. And I do. When I'm training for marathons or ultra marathons, I'm always running. Like right now, to give you an example, I'm training for something, but I'm not training for, I'm training for a race right now that I can't really talk about yet, but I will share soon. Super exciting stuff.
So one interesting thing is if one of your goals is mainly muscle mass, running too much will actually hurt you. Sprinting tends to increase testosterone and actually enhance the muscle growth, but frequent long distance running, like if you're running over 5K and stuff, that body needs that energy. And like I said, your body's just a crazy adapting machine. And so what's the point of having a lot of muscle if your body says, I'm a long distance runner, I need to be low weight and move a lot? It's going to basically say, I don't need this muscle. And so you're going to be training to build the muscle and then running long distances, and you'll almost be fighting. So if you really want to retain that muscle mass and grow muscle, I would say don't run too much. I would say don't run more time than you're spending strength training. Or that strength training. He's got to me. Lifting weights.
When I'm in a marathon prep or an ultra prep and I'm going for a certain time or place or PR, that training takes priority. And I allow my strength training to support and complement my running. But right now in the season of life, I'm truly in this balance of strength and running, the true hybrid lifestyle, where I'm strength training about 5 days a week, and I'm running about 45 miles a week. Now, for a lot.
Yeah, he looks in pretty, if you look at him, he looks in pretty muscular shape, but I would say it becomes really hard to retain muscle mass and grow muscle while running that much. That's a lot of running. Then again, I'm speaking mostly to beginners. If your body has adapted to that, obviously it becomes easier to retain that muscle mass and grow muscle, but that's a crazy adaptation. So if he's running as much as he says, and he looks, I can't see him that well, but he looks decently muscular, I would say he's been training a long time. He's been running a long time.
A lot of people, that might seem like a lot of miles. But going back to progressive overload, which is not only applied to strength training, but also running, 45 miles a week for me now is not anything crazy. 3 years ago, it would have been a lot. But because I've progressively overloaded total volume in terms of mileage and how frequently I am running and at the paces that I am running, being patient with that and seeing the results over a long period of time and practicing progressive overload, now that is my norm and my baseline compared to where it was 2, 3, 4 years ago. That's what making progress looks like. And
his video is kind of all over the place here. I thought we were talking about fat loss. Now we're talking about running.
Feels like. So I'm a big fan of cardiovascular conditioning. Obviously.
I mean, great. I mean, do your cardio. Like I said, that's my advice throughout this video. Is listen to the 4 steps I said. I'm not going to repeat them. 2 and 2. And I would say as a beginner, that's your best bet for this. But over time, you could start looking at like maybe running as much as he is, or body recomposition, or I mean, whatever it may be. A lot of these videos, they have some advanced topics in them, because that's the thing, is you're not going to get beginners teaching these concepts. I mean, not in a good way. So start basic, and you can adapt to some things over time. And fitness and health may seem complex because there are complex topics and methods, but start basic, start simple. And I would say that's your best method in terms of reaching these goals you want to reach. I think that's where we're going to leave it today for my stream. Hopefully you guys will learn something. Hopefully the video is all right. I'll be working on getting things better and frequent and